We're live.
Should we? Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the July meeting of the Estate Management Committee. We will commence with apologies for absence. We have apologies from Councillor Green. We assume Councillor Clark is just running behind. Declarations of interest. Does anybody have anything that they would wish to declare in terms of disclosable pecuniary interests or other interests? John.
Yes, my client was a trustee of BA.
Okay.
So,
Mike.
I think we're going to talk about food bank.
Yep.
And my wife runs a food bank now.
Okay. So we'll move on to representations from interested parties. And I see that we have two. Helen, would you like to go first?
Yes, I can do.
Or would you like to talk to Sven?
I'd like to talk to you about the rubbish disposal in the town centre. I work as a matron at Laston House in Randall School, as a Greedy Piglet, and I walk through the churchyard and the gas plant, so I see the bins in the churchyard and the one next to the bus stop just outside Laston. And I've noticed that they seem to be getting less and less regularly emptied, and also when things are happening, such as the food festival, it would have been ideal to have them emptied on the Friday before the food festival, because they were already overflowing, and then the food festival happened and there were just bags, open bags next to the bin, stuff being blown around. I'm also a member of Blooming Oundle, and part of that group collects rubbish from around the town, and they had to do a big litter pick after that. Things like Party at the Wharf, but other big things, the Vintage Festival, it would be good to let the council know that we need an extra bin emptying session, I think.
Okay, thank you. So obviously the standard answer is that North Northampton is responsible for emptying the bins, but part of what we will be discussing this evening is the standard, or understanding the standard to which they think they are adhering, whether they are adhering to it, and if ultimately the standard to which they aspire is still below the standard which Oundle would like for the town, then what do we do about that? So
Yes.
Thank you for your contribution.
Obviously, it increases the risk of like pests running around and moving it, and then just the litter, it could blow into traffic, it could cause all sorts of problems.
Well, and the environmental health and disease and all the other things that go with that. Thank you very much. Anything else that you'd like to contribute? Thank you. You're welcome to hang around and hear us debate that later, or you're welcome to run around.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And we have representatives from Volunteer Action who would like to present their proposal for taking over the cafe at Flitton House. Is that right?
That is correct, yes. Thank you. Am I all right to sit here or would you like to stand? Okay. Thank you very much for having me here. I have submitted a paper which I hope you've managed to have a read through, but if not, I'm going to just go through a few of the points on there. The background of this is that the trustees and myself went through a strategy review day on volunteer action, and we looked at ways that we could increase our community support in line with our constitution. One of those items that came up was the want or the desire for a community cafe or hub, so that we could put on a different range of events, as well as look at feeding the community and creating those connections in the rural community. It just so happens to be that we work above one, which is sitting downstairs, so hence why I'm here now. The idea behind it as well, let's be honest, open and frank about that, we are also looking at diversification of income streams to be able to support the charity, to ensure that we're here for generations to come to support the community in the way that we do, and we will adapt and change with that. So one of the ideas is to run the cafe as a social enterprise with all the surplus funds to be, at this stage, this is just a proposal, so it's up for debate, but the surplus funds to come back into volunteer action so that we can reinvest that within the local community. and supports anyone over the age of 65 or those that are registered disabled with the various services that we have. I'm hoping that this fits in with your vision for the town. I know that I attend the LAP meetings quite regularly, the local area partnership meetings, and it's brought up that there is a single person household increase, well, so it's an increase significantly higher than anywhere else in East North Hants. East North Hants, yes. It is a mouthful, isn't it? At 33.8% was the last time that I saw it of single households in the Amble area. So I'm really hoping that this will be able to connect with the community at this area, not take away from the town and the infrastructure that is in the town, but act as a bridge, especially considering that we have the doctor's surgery here, the library here, the council here. It's an easy, accessible route for the ever-growing areas that are up here, such as Creed Road, Molson Way, the Cotterstock areas. And for those who can't walk into town, because it's a little distance there. One of the areas as well that we look at as a charity is that we work in collaboration with others. So we personally, or I personally lead 12 other organisations across North Hants in delivering services to the most vulnerable. So on the whole, that's older people, in addition to providing community transport. So I lead the collaborative on the North Hants community transport schemes. So I'm hoping to strengthen those collaborations within this hub. So there's the community aspect, the finance aspect, the VA, but also the chatty cafe model, which I'm sure Morag has mentioned. She certainly mentioned it to me. But the idea of that is that we would reach out to other organisations, whether they be local community organisations or our connections such as Mind, AGK North Hants, just to name a few. And every, say for example, Thursday, that would be a chatty cafe day where that particular charity can come in to the cafe downstairs and run its services from there. Provide a wide range of tech support or skills days, legal will writing, whatever the community demands, we can look at facilitating on a programme. But the main part is we have, and it is to run that proposed Monday to Friday, 10 till 3. We would initially run that with our volunteering, so it would be a volunteer increasing aspect within the community, with the idea that we have a paid member of staff to oversee all of that and ensure that it happens. But with the idea that year 2 that we can start to look at employability and increasing employment in the area, specifically if it were VA and the VA cafe, in line with our constitution. So we would be looking at providing employment opportunities for those that would be disadvantaged in other ways, such as over the age or over retirement age, or those who are living with a disability. So that would help bring those back into the workforce. Sorry, I've said that a lot, haven't I? The idea would be to create that warm space as well. We can help in establishing that so that you have the warm space. There's somewhere for everyone to go where they can feel safe, they can feel secure, and they can be part of the community and hear more about what this wonderful community offers. And any questions?
Questions?
So I have a couple. One is, I noticed that NNC have sponsored this, or they're certainly on your paper. So are NNC involved, and how far a catchment area would you see? Is it Thrapston, for example, Elton, Corby? Are they part of this scheme as well?
They're not. Well, Elton, we do take a view that we do cover, but that is in collaboration with the Huntingdonshire Car Scheme. They're based far too far away and they don't have any volunteers to serve Elton, so we support them in collaboration in doing that. The reason why NNC are at the bottom of the paper alongside other people there are regular supporters or collaborators that we have.
Okay.
So for complete transparency, we are in the final year of a 3-year grant with NNC, which we call the strategic grants. And I lead on 2 of those, which is where the lead of those 12 organisations comes from. But no, there's no funding, no support from NNC with this venture.
So the second question, which is that we already provide warm space from time to time. Are you suggesting that you take that over, or you run it in collaboration with? OTC or?
Everything I suggest is in collaboration, would be my view, with OTC. So it's in line with your vision, your hopes. We can work in collaboration with our trustees and your councillors. The warm space idea, if it already works, I'm a big believer if it broke, don't fix it. But if there is additional funding that we can help you source, being a charity, that you can't normally access, then that would be another route.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Wonderful set of ideas. I'm very enthusiastic about them. The one question I have though is, does it require any changes to the space downstairs, or is it fit for purpose as it is, or whatever?
I think it is. The last time that I looked at it, which was a good few months ago now, the space directly behind where the little kitchen is in the corner, that seemed adequate for what we were proposing to present. So that was things like soup of the day in the winter, and they're easy enough to be able to make, you know, a couple of cakes or ranges of cakes. We wouldn't be looking at providing a huge menu. It would be a cost affordable menu with a pay it forward scheme, so that if you can afford to pay more, you can pay for the next person's meal, and it would be a varying menu based on surplus food that's in the area as well, is the initial thought. But I don't think there's anything that needs to change downstairs at this stage. The only thing that I did notice and did think of is a barista coffee machine, if there were to be one. I think the machine itself is fine, and I think some people say it's some of the best coffee that's around, but.
And what about refrigeration space and freezers, all of that's adequate?
There's a large refrigerator down there, and it's got the freezer alongside it, hasn't it? So-
there's plenty of that, it's on the counter as well.
And then a related question, which always comes up when one's talking about serving food and drink. Who would do the food hygiene certification?
We would have to investigate that and go
You
into
would
that.
do that?
Yeah, there's an awful lot. I mean, I admit that this is a proposal, it's an idea to see whether you are warm to the concept of this happening. But there is an entire business proposal and business plan that we're working on currently. Hygiene certificates being one of those, full training of staff.
No, it's really just trying to understand whether you felt that, because you talk about the collaboration, whether that would be more on our side than your side, or whatever.
There's probably the insurance parts that we need to look at as well, which would be parts to do with building and the fixtures and fittings, so there'll be a collaboration.
No, that's fine.
But it's early days on that.
So, I'm thinking along the more practical things and thinking about your offering, as it were. So how much more is your offering got for us, or for the public at large, than is already presented? And the fact that we do let other parties use the building for rentals and things like that, how would that fit in with what we do with that space already?
Yeah, I think it's a difficult one for me to answer without seeing your full calendar of events and hiring of the space. But if we're to talk about the hub downstairs, we would be open to the community sharing it. So if there's knit and natter, for example, I know happens on it, that's fine.
That's the sort of thing I'm meaning.
We would reserve a space for them in the corner that's for the knit and natterers that come in. That's the way that I can see that one working. Ballet mums and dads, I should say as well, coming in, they're the other ones that I tend to see. I don't think there'll be too much crossover, because that's why I was thinking of closing things at 3 o'clock. So that then the space was free then in the evenings for your regular hirers or people to be there. But I would need to see what the plans are that we would need to work around. But I'm sure that we can accommodate. It's a free open space, isn't it? It's an open community hub.
Yes, so you're offering a rental, a realistic rental for the space, or?
No, I think.
You think it should be free?
For community groups to come into there.
For you,
For us.
Yeah.
I think that's up for your debate
No,
here.
well, I'm wondering what your thoughts about it,
I would love it.
how it's going to look. Come on.
We would love the space, for free. If the space is not being utilised freely, we could utilise it with the idea of bringing in that additional footfall, and then building on those community spaces. But I know it's not an ideal world, but an ideal
I'm
world
not
would be.
quite sure that you're answering my question.
No? I must go to my like a politician. What would we like for it? Is that what you're asking?
Somebody wants to ask something.
Yeah, I mean, if
But more
I was
for what
asking
I'm
questions
saying.
I've already asked, it makes me look really good on this one. But, I mean, just straightforwardly, would your plan require a grant from Eltham Town Council, do you think, possibly?
I don't think necessarily a grant. There's different ways of looking at that. If we were to not have to pay a rental space on the room down below, whether that came in a grant format or whether that came in that we are allowed that space.
Yeah. I'm only suggesting it because we are going to be doing a budget round quicker than anybody ever thinks, because it comes out so quick. And that is in September, October. And so whatever plans you've got, if a number drops out at the bottom you need help with, then that's a good time to get these things in. And not December, because it'll be too late.
Of course, yeah. Thank you. No, I'll have a look into that. Thank you.
So everybody have a go that wants to have a go, and then I'll have a go. So again, on practicalities, how quickly would you like to actually open if you could open?
Practically, we could start a soft launch, I would say October, just in time for the warm space in the winter. So when I say a soft launch, it wouldn't be the full capacity every single day. We'd be looking at a staged approach with the view of opening this up properly February time, I would say. Just because I need to take this as well, and your feedback, any feedback that you have following this to my trustee board, for them to have a look at as well. And that would be in September.
I'm going to give you an indication that I would consider that the most optimistic timeline that could possibly be achieved. And you're probably more looking later than that, and we perhaps aren't going to be talking about you facilitating a warm space this winter, but next winter. Unless everything goes swimmingly. As a minimum, if we said to you, we don't want to hand control of the hub to you, but actually just as the knitters come in and use the knitting space and citizens advice come in and use a certain space, we said to you, between the hours of 10 and 3, you can use the kitchen and offer, in addition to the Honesty coffee area, you're offering over and above that, would that meet the minimum criteria of what you want to achieve? What's the least amount of control you would want?
I have to think about that, because that's another scenario that I thought about, retaining the Honesty coffee part. Retaining it outside of our operational hours, yes, that would be fine, it's your space and your machine. Between the hours of 10 and 3, if we're offering something, I'm not sure how that could work with the Honesty coffee as well.
Well, it depends how much the if you're offering cake to go with a coffee, or your coffee's nicer than our coffee, or you're offering soups, then all of that is over and above what's already there. As opposed to people having to learn that before 10 they can come and have a coffee of a particular type for a particular price, and then between 10 and 3 it's different, and then from 3. You know, I don't want to confuse the town.
Oh no, absolutely not. Yeah.
So okay.
No, thank you. That's a beautiful thought.
Right. And any other questions that have been prompted by the questions? So okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Again, we will discuss your proposal in full later, and you're welcome to stay or run away.
Thank you so much for your time.
Can I just add one thing very quickly?
Sorry, lady.
Just a point of information about the timing. In case you're not aware, council doesn't meet during August, which is why I think the chair is concerned about getting it all signed up before September.
Not a problem.
Yeah,
But
the clock is ticking.
if you did need any support that was outside of this arrangement whilst it's being thought about, we're only upstairs, we run regular events in the community, so we can move those event here and then help support warm space if you wanted a crafting event, for example. So we can do all sorts in between.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you later.
Okay. We will move on to 26:30 minutes of the previous meeting. Does anybody have any comment of the minutes of the previous meeting?
Question. I didn't read in there any minutes of the discussion that was held subsequently in camera. Are those minutes anywhere?
Can you say that again?
Didn't you have some discussion after I left in camera?
Yes, there was about 3 items, I think, wasn't there?
There's nothing on those minutes that records the decisions made that I can see. So where are those decisions recorded?
I'm not sure that there were any decisions made, were there?
No, and I didn't realise you were supposed to minute them.
Well,
When you do them in a separate document, do you then?
I would have thought a separate document, the council's
Oh,
had
that's
discussions
yeah.
and reaching conclusions or asking for actions, even if none were then asked for or asked for actions or made decisions, I would have thought it would be a matter of principle that all council meetings were minuted. So I'm surprised that there aren't any. And if there aren't any, then, for example, I wasn't there for the in-camera bit. I don't know, so not every councillor was there for the in-camera bit, so we have got no knowledge
Right.
of what was discussed. So I think it ought to be.
So can I ask then the outgoing mayor, who will have signed full council minutes for the last 12 months, where we've obviously had in-camera conversations.
I've never thought about it before.
Okay, so
I've never thought about it before, otherwise I would have mentioned it.
So rather than making a request directly to you, Lisa, it's
It's
a
a
query to the clerk
Yeah.
about the minuting of in-camera.
I know, because I know that obviously the meetings I've held, we've not had that many in-camera sessions, so, yeah, I don't recall ever seeing any, like, pendant, attached to it,
So if I may,
yeah.
Yeah, but one of the things that you've put in a way, is something that probably shouldn't be declared, as in next steps agreed, because that says that we've agreed to do something,
Yeah, but I think.
rather than saying, the items were discussed, full stop.
I think if you do go back to some of the council meetings I signed, there will have been notice, Emma will have made note and minuted actions that were taken in camera.
Right.
Particularly, we had discussions, for example, about matters at maximum, Emma and I have been involved in, and they were minuted. So it ought to be consistent.
It's problematic though, because they're minuted, but those minutes cannot be public.
No, so it should be separate for all.
We'll leave that with you.
to look at.
Yeah, okay. So are we not proposing the minutes for now then?
Well,
I think we have to, because
I'm proposing the minutes as they stand as being a true record of the bit that they cover.
Yeah.
But we recognise there is an extra bit, and we just would like something next month of sorting that out.
so if you're proposing it, I'm happy to second.
Okay.
All those in favour? Unanimous? Seventh. Cool. Right. So 263101, receiving the property and open space report. Anything you'd like to draw our attention to, Lisa?
Not that I can think of, I did add in, after I
Oh, sorry,
published it.
I apologise. It should have been the income and expenditure report for OTC's properties. Has anybody had a comment on the financials? No, right, so 02, Lisa.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but when I published this last week, I hadn't got the information on the kite situation and the bench, picnic bench location suggestions, so they were added into the update and the paperwork, after the fact, so there's nothing in there that you haven't seen since Thursday apart from that.
Have you got rid of the van yet?
Yes, that's been updated. I've done
It's
that.
saying
I've
the
done
van's
that.
being reported on.
No, I was just checking.
That might have been the other one that I added in, because I got into work yesterday and I said the van's gone, so, yeah.
I did read that. so-
Did I added it in?
It's been sold as opposed to gone.
Yeah.
Can you tell us how much you got for it?
Did I not write that on here? It's around about
don't think you
5,000,
Brilliant.
around about 5,000, I think just shy of 5,000.
Oh, that's 2 slates on the roof.
Yeah.
Potentially.
Brilliant. Any other questions on the report?
Well, there were some which will come under individual items, I think.
So we'll move on to 3103 to receive the draft 5-year action plan. So what we need to do here is scrutinise that well. So we are going to approve the activity projects and associated scheduling in the proposed 5-year plan and request that the estates officer identifies costs as appropriate. Now, a number of those items are then further covered further down, and I suspect it's going to actually be easier to discuss it as part of the 5-year plan rather than not discuss parts of the 5-year plan and then discuss them further down. So, has everybody seen the 5-year plan and want to do their own thing? I personally think it's a tremendous piece of work, and I thank all the officers that have been involved in it. I'm just desperately looking for it for the moment. I was looking for a Word document, not a spreadsheet.
Comment?
Yes.
It's wonderful to see one document rather than 3 documents, always helpful. Just in terms of the layout, Lisa, minor point, but I started reading down it and then thinking, oh right, okay, that's the OPEX. Oh right, that's actually belonging to the courthouse. It does say courthouse, but it's in the same sort of, font and everything as the ones below it. So if we could just maybe highlight courthouse, wet house, going from centre, and then if OPEX and CapEx are mixed up anywhere, just to make sure they're in, they might not be, but that way we can have an addition for CapEx and an addition for OPEX, so when we come to do the budgets, we'll be clear as to what we're being asked to spend where.
I think that the OPEX and CapEx have been differentiated.
I'm just asking them.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure what the issue is. OPEX and CapEx are shown separately.
Well, cleaning carpets, is it OPEX or CapEx? Placing carpets looks quite clear, but cleaning carpets maybe. Anyway, but it doesn't, it's a minor thing, it's all down there. So well done, getting it all together with the number at the end of it, which no doubt will grow considerably.
So the key elements, sorry, John.
I was only going to say that I think it's a tremendous piece of work. I like where it's been set out. I'm anxious, I don't know what support you might need, but I'm anxious to see how this might pan out when you fill in all the details, because there are lots of £1 things in here, and there's it seems like a lot of work to be done between now and September, so how confident are you that you'll get most of that done, at least for 27, 28?
Well, yeah, that's what we're aiming for. So there's Emma and myself and Sarah, the new finance officer. So we've met with James and we've been meeting regularly. So I think between the 3 of us, hopefully it's doable.
Yeah, it's a good piece of work. I like it.
So when the spreadsheet that was put forward last month or discussed last month was handed over to the officers, a key question was that they should where they propose to do things in a particular year, especially next year, be confident that they can deliver that amount of change in that year. And that question was taken very seriously by certainly the clerk, who understood that it was a commitment to deliver. So I'm pleased to hear the confirmation that that thought process has happened, and we'll see where we get to in September, but it can't be any worse than this. So it's going to be much better. I think a key thing we need to recognise is that even with a significant number of £1 in there, where we've said we're going to do something, but we don't yet know what it's going to cost, we are talking about proposing spending £312,000 in the next 5 years, which is £60,000 a year, and we've got less than that in reserves. So finance is going to be tricky. John?
And just a follow-up to the previous question, we've got later on in this agenda spending on play equipment, refurbishing the ramp, half-pipe structural service repairs, etc. None of those are in, as far as I can see, this year's budget or next year's budget. So those are all going to be extra budget items, which presumably need to go to full council because they're outside the remit of this committee.
So so I think it's part of this process, which is why I was saying we perhaps want to drag them in. So we have a proposal to replace some play equipment this year. My response to that would perhaps be, by the time we get round to approving it, getting it done, etc., we've probably missed the key play time for this year. So rather than rushing back to full council, getting authority to spend money this year, and then actually still not delivering it in time for the playtime, it should be pushed back to 27, 28, go through the budget process.
So to summarise, you're looking to approve it now for spending next year, but we haven't had next year's budget approved. So you're looking to approve it subject to F&GP and then full council approving next year's budget.
If we offer the feedback to the officers that replacement of play equipment should not happen this year, then we don't have to agree that it's happening next year, now and here, because that becomes part of the implicit budget process. So I would see more that all we're going to do is say that we don't want to do mid-year special releases for play equipment, because that's something that should be planned. And so we're not expecting it to be spent this year, and whatever else, it needs to be added to the 27-28 amounts that you expect to spend. And I think the same is true of any proposal to do with the skate park. In terms of the proposal implicit within the skate park proposal about let's replace the half pipe and then refurbish the other parts of the skate park. Again, implicit within agreeing the 5-year plan is that the approach we want to take? Because if actually the approach we want to take on the skate park or the recreation ground is, no, we think we should replace the whole thing as a one thing, that completely changes what the 5-year plan looks like. So that's why I'm saying both of those things need to be discussed now within the 5-year plan approach, because it's by agreeing the 5-year plan that you implicitly agree what approaches you're taking. Max?
I don't disagree with that as such. My only reflection is that when it comes to the rec and play equipment, whether it be skate park or the things that wobble around and slides and what have you, it's whether or not they're health and safety issues, because if they're deemed to be unfit for purpose, then we either have to shut them down and repair them, if you see what I mean.
Yes.
So waiting for next year might not always be possible, depending on the nature of what requires to be done.
Yes, but as we are today, we've got our engineering report for this year, The only item that was condemned was removed last year. And that's the item that we're talking about replacing this year.
Yeah.
So ideally, we would have thought about that, replacing it this year in last year's budget, but it was new for everybody, didn't get in. Do I think it's so urgent that we ought to have an emergency release? Personally, no, I don't. I think it should go through the budget, and we should recognise the full cost of what we're doing in each year, just as with the skate park, which personally I support replacing the half pipe, refurbishing the rest, not necessarily rushing out and spending a huge amount replacing the whole thing as one. I like the incremental approach. I think there are benefits to it. It lacks a little bit of the ta-da, here's a lovely new £250,000 thing, but it's just business as usual. We have a lovely play area, let's keep it lovely and replace things as they need replacing. So I support that approach, but implicit in the subsequent decisions that we're going to take is that the 5-year plan needs to be amended slightly to show that anything that was recommended for this year won't actually happen until next. But I think if we get that through in September and finally agreed in December, then the officers can be planning in January, February, March for delivery in April. Sure. And then you've got it delivered in time between April, May, June, and then July, when everybody wants to be playing on all the stuff, it's all done.
Okay, so I have one other question. Sure. So again, I very much welcome what's being done here, and as you know, I tried to do something similar but never got the format right, so I think this format works a lot better. In doing that, what I was never sure about, if you take any of the items really which are annual or within a kind of repeating timeline.
Mm-hmm.
So town, I'm just looking at random town CTV servicing annual. Apparently next year we're budgeting, or we're proposing to budget 475. But the 475 remains unchanged right through to 2032. My question is, should we really be indexing these? It ain't going to be 475 in 5 years' time, that's for sure.
I absolutely support that aspiration. My personal response is, for this year, a step too far. Let's just get an inkling of what they're going to be. Don't forget that they will be reviewed again next year when we add a new year 5 in, and we can amend all of those numbers based on what we paid this year, where they're currently set based on what we paid last year. So all of this can be refreshed. Because it's a very simple format, it can be refreshed quickly and simply. And once we've not put this through a budget process yet, we've not tried to update it as we will do next year. And next year we might actually go, this worked well, those bits didn't work well, these bits could be improved. It's a process. I don't want to make it too complicated too soon.
Okay.
Personally. Any other comments on what people have seen? So the only things that in any way disappoint me about this is we've got a whole load of list of very clear things that we're going to do. And then we've got 2 lines, churchyard wall contingency, and, oh no, so only 1 line. So that's saying we're putting aside £5,000 a year, or we're going to spend £5,000 a year, maybe. Whereas everything else we're saying we're going to spend this money, definitely. So, again, for this year, I might argue in September when it comes back. Next year, I probably definitely will, because basically where we're saying we're not sure, just as we said, we've got a huge, we've got the R&M reserve for all of our property because we're not sure whether we're going to need a roof? Or how have we found out that we do need a new roof? By doing a survey. So if we get somebody to come and look at our churchyard wall, they should be able to say, that's good for 5 years, or you're going to need to spend 25 grand in 3 years. So I would like this to be for definite, what activities are you going to do that you definitely need money for, not we might need to spend 5 grand a year. But the rest of it, hugely impressed and pleased with, personally.
One of the problems with that is that some of it is about necessity and some of it is about desirability. So when we had to spend a large amount of money before, it was something that potentially would never have been picked up in a survey. It was due to the wall collapsing as a result of excess water and tree roots and things like that, which is why I suggest a contingency, because survey would spend a lot of money on the survey and not actually be much further forward. The other thing so obviously if a wall collapses, that's a necessity. The other thing about the churchyard is, the cemetery wall, is, as you know, it has these metal railings that are attached to and above it. And when we replaced a section of the wall, probably 2 years or so ago now, we also refurbished those railings, which means that they now look completely out of kilter with the railings elsewhere. And there was a view that if we could afford it, we ought to really do all of the other railings as well. And it's not a requirement, but it's not a necessity in that sense, but it would actually be nice to do.
But I want to say,
I still get where you're going with it, but I'm just, with all of these things, I sometimes feel they're not necessarily quite as simple as it looks.
so this year's budget has £3,000 for refurbishing the cemetery railings in it. So, which is why there is, for this year only, the 2026, so the current financial year, just to remind people of what projects were already budgeted. So it's a question of, is the officer confident that that £3,000 is going to get spent refurbishing the railings this year? And if it isn't, then obviously that will go back to reserves. But the 27-28 budget might then want to have that same project put into it. So don't lose sight of the thing that you want to do, and we'll see in September whether the officers have said, yes, we're getting that done this year, or whether it's getting replanned for next year.
Okay.
But in general, then, are we happy to pass this unchanged?
Yep, it's good work.
Yeah, it's good work.
Cool. Then would anybody like to propose that we send the officers off? So Mike proposed it, John was seconding it, all those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you very much, Lisa. We look forward to receiving a fully costed thing in September. Brilliant. In which case, there we go. We are on to Fletton House. So we've heard 263201. We've heard the proposal from the VA regarding the VA Cafe. Would anybody like to summarise their thoughts on this?
John, so I've just got a couple really. One is, although we don't have a chatty cafe vision that I'm aware of, part of our vision is to work. We don't have a chatty cafe vision specifically, but we do have a vision. We do have a vision to work with all areas of the community. So I think it's a good idea if we can manage the logistics of keeping the smaller coffee machine for those who just want to pop in and not making it part of a commercial, semi-commercial enterprise. My only concern about the cafe downstairs is a rent-free thing, because we're already looking at rent-free for the food bank thing. If this is rent-free as well, does it create a precedent that we will start to give our space away for nothing when we should be maximising the value of these assets for the community. I'm not saying I'm against it, to be clear. I'm asking the question because we ought to at least to show we're considering the impact of a further rent-free, if that's the proposal.
Thanks.
Well, I can make similar points to that. In terms of the rent-free, I wonder to what extent it's a bit of a red herring in the sense that we're not renting it out anyway.
No, but if somebody comes along and creates an income stream and doesn't pay for it, it's effectively rent-free.
True, but we're not losing income as it currently stands.
The other counter is the space downstairs which is not being let at the moment. We're not losing income, but we would be if we let it. We're losing an opportunity for income.
No, and I agree, but sorry, and that relates to my second point, which is, regardless of what we say, clearly I think it has to go to full council.
Yeah.
Yeah, going back to the rent situation, if David Chapman was here, this is where he would throw himself back in his chair. And we've had half an hour of history, because there have been several attempts to run this as a cafe in all sorts of different ways, including by the council. And it is immensely difficult for some reasons, I can give reasons. But there would have to be a rent situation, to be fair, because they're intending to take money from it to bolster they're not just doing it for the community. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
It's not going to be given away.
And whilst I would love to be able to believe that the more they made from the cafe, the less we would have to give them,
Yes.
they would be willing fools if they allowed that situation to happen, where they're putting in all this effort and
Yes.
getting no extra
They
money.
want to be jolly pleased with what they're
Absolutely.
doing.
So, may I?
Can I make a comment on rent-free whatevers? There are plenty of things that the council funds at the moment without specifically saying it funds it. For example, maybe less contentious here, the museum, who take up a third of the courthouse space for £1,500 a year. That commercial space is worth about 30, 40,000 or whatever it is. But we don't call it rent-free because they're paying £1,500, but the actual subsidy, should the council have let it to a commercial organisation, there would be a big difference. So I think one of the things that we need to talk about, not tonight, it's not the agenda and blah, 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 but is this whole concept about grants, rent-free subsidies, because ultimately it all comes out somewhere. And I think we do give a grant to volunteer action.
We do.
A few thousand a year.
For specific.
Okay, so, you know, there is a grant there, and rather than us having to talk about every single situation every single time, hopefully we'll get to a situation where we say, this is the rent per square metre, and these are any other charges per square metre. So therefore, this space here would cost 10 grand a year if you put all that together, but because it's so and so, we'll do it for 5, which means we are subsidising 5,000. And that way, it's completely transparent to the whole town what we're supporting or not supporting. And if people don't want us to support things like that, they can make representations so that we can think about it for ongoing. But at the moment, what's happening is that we keep on, every time somebody wants something, we're sort of talking about it in a slightly different way. But actually, in an account setting point of view, it's exactly the same.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
But I don't think anybody said or suggested it.
No.
I thought that was the implication.
I think that was
The
the
request.
I thought that was an implication from Rachel and implied within the.
It's the request.
Yeah,
So, I'm going to be clear about our requirements if we are ever going to be asked to make a decision on this. We will require very much more than simply the request, even if it is fully costed by VA, because there are many other issues. So there is all the other issues about, as you raised, other users of that space. As Max raised, you know, who has the liability for what? So I will not be prepared to make a decision on this unless I have a full paper from the council officers saying this is the impact on the operation of Fletton House, the other users of Fletton House who might be using that space. Potentially, I would want to know that every other user of the hub space has been asked and has agreed.
Yeah.
And full clarity about what the commercial proposition is, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know, so does, and this is, you know, a shortfall in my knowledge from my inexperience, does anybody currently pay to use the hub? You know, do the knitters pay, or do we just, is that a space that we provide for free and anybody can just wander in and, okay, so the knitters are using it. So, but if I wanted to wander in there and tell everybody to come along and I'll give them foot rubs and charge them a tenner, can I do that? Can I run a commercial operation from that? In which case, how do you know, and at what point do you tell me that I can't? And so I would want to understand what is the current operation of that space based on what policies, and how will that be impacted by us letting VA loose in there? And part of that will be a negotiation with VA about what they want to do. And part of it will be us ultimately saying, we currently have these policies in place, we're going to waive that one because VA are going to deliver it, or whatever else. But I won't make a decision on this one without a very full briefing. I don't think that would be right. But I guess ultimately, I think, it also does need to go to full council because
We want to see David, throw
Yes,
his
we want to
Yeah.
throw back on the chair.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, sorry, Mike.
That all said, personally, I'm very enthusiastic about this type of approach from partners in the community, and I think it's great that people are bringing these things forward. So hopefully it will come to a positive conclusion, but as you said, there's a bit more to go before we get there. But they should go away thinking, yeah, we are keen to hear more and aggressive.
Well,
Because we've acknowledged it is in line with our vision to.
Yes.
So, so implicitly, what I didn't say in that I would want to see a full workup of how it would work is I wouldn't be asking for that if I didn't want it to work. So if we were definitely saying no, then we would go back now and say no. But we're saying, yes, we are really interested in this happening, but we want a lot more detail before we can get truly enthusiastic about delivering it. Are you happy, Lisa, that you understand what we?
I do, but one question I've got is what's the difference between this and the food bank discussion that we had? Because there seems to be a clear differential between what was agreed with the food bank and now what we're expecting VA to provide.
Well, VA is using a space that's currently used. Food bank was simply asking to have a room that was currently occupied.
But the room did have use, that's why we had to bring it to council, because they would have sole use of it, which would mean other users that have been using it wouldn't be able to use it.
But I'm going to say that the briefing paper that came with the food bank was insufficient.
Okay.
I wasn't part of that discussion, but it seems to be one clear difference is the food bank provides a service to people who can't afford food. Do they sell? Do they make money? Do they look to make a profit? Do they look to create a surplus? Or are they just providing a service? This is providing a service. So that would be my differentiator, but I made that in ignorance of the food bank proposal.
So that's 202, food bank. So no supporting information on that one, right? Yeah. So I can't see what we can discuss because I don't know anything about it.
Well, you didn't give me any details about what kind of, you agreed the amount, but in terms of term, so the courthouse tenants, it was 3 years. Then we went to 18 months for all new tenants, and then obviously here, VA got a different agreement in terms of term. So Emma just said, rather than speaking to the food bank people and saying, what kind of idea did you have in terms of term, what the estates feel is a reasonable term to try this out, so, because that's the first thing that the solicitor will ask us, what's the term?
Well, given the feedback that we had from the last discussion, where it was questioned whether we had made a valid decision because there was no proposal on the agenda, I'm going to firstly note that there is no proposal on the agenda. So if we invent a proposal and agree it, then we are open to equally the same criticism, which is, again, a comment I've made that we need to have substantive proposals on this agenda that we can agree. Matt?
You're right. I was just going to simply point out that this whole issue very much relates to the issue that Mike brought up earlier on about getting our ducks in a row when it comes to understanding the extent to which we subsidise various activities, whether it be through grants, whether it be through real rents, subsidised rents, no rent at all, etc. And in that sense, I just wonder whether or not we need to somehow, whether it be this committee or whether it be full council, to try and grasp that bigger nettle first, because the more of these isolated decisions we make, it kind of doesn't help the process. That's just my observation. But as there's no proposal, I'm not proposing anything, I'm just making an observation that it's tied up into that wider issue. That's the issue we've got to really solve, not food bank per se.
I've obviously not been listening or reading or something, so could somebody just clarify why this is food banks different when we've got several other in the town already?
They want to move from the Methodist Church to the Aldwyn room.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and that again furthers our whole policy of making this the hub of the town. If you need help, come to us.
But yeah, I mean, they also have one in the church, don't they? As far as I know.
No,
They don't.
no, there's only one, it's a Methodist church.
I know the one in the Methodist
That's
church.
That's the one that moved it.
Yeah,
So,
right, it's that one. Right. Yeah, that's
So ultimately, whilst I appreciate that you have specifically said you don't want to do this, I would like you to go back to the food bank and ask them what the minimum term that they would want in terms of certainty, because if we're only saying it's going to be for 6 months and then we're going to reconsider whether we charge you £5,000 a year, then you probably wouldn't bother to move. So there's going to be a minimum period that they would definitely want certainty for. We can't agree anything here anyway because we haven't got a substantive proposal. So I think it's worth going away, having a chat, and then in September coming back, hopefully with a very clear, this is the negotiated position with the food bank about what they would want, and the officers' support, which can come here, meet our approval and recommendation then to full council for again later in September.
Just a question, makes sense. Question again in ignorance because I wasn't part of that original discussion. But if we got to the stage of discussing and agreeing terms of the lease, there must have been a proposal for us to have discussed to say we want to go to a lease. Wasn't there?
It was a discuss and agree.
Yeah.
So no actual proposal, it was just a
Well,
general
Supplementary information.
but my understanding of estates agendas passing is that many things come on discuss and agree and are agreed. I personally am, as chair, exercising my right to be pernickety about that. So I don't like discuss and agree. I want anything that we are going to agree to appear as a full. So that may be a change from past approaches.
We've always taken things to the council.
Oh, yeah, but we have authority to decide some things, but
Yeah,
not
a
all.
recommendation is what we sometimes do.
Well, if we were a working
It's what
party,
you're saying, really, I think.
so if we were a working party, we would have no authority to decide anything. So where we're being asked to
Yes,
discuss the
exactly.
gates, we wouldn't be able to, we'd have to go back to full council. There are things that have to go to full council, which is the entering into large leases, etc., which I think this constitutes. But so in theory, we haven't, when we discussed negotiating with the food bank and offering it to them for £1, we have not agreed that. The food bank were present to see us discuss it. So if we attempt to then go back to them and say, oh no, we want £5,000, they will be not unjustifiably disappointed. But we have not agreed anything with them yet, because we have not, the only thing we're ultimately going to agree is the lease.
So just to get this straight, sorry, are you proposing, without a proposal, that Lisa, having spoken to Food Bank, comes back with a clear proposal, both in terms of duration, terms, value?
Well, just as we spoke to the Scouts for 5 years, and then ultimately what came back to full council was, this is the lease that we intend to sign, please authorise it. And things have gone from there. I expect a proposal at some point that says, this is the lease for the food bank, please authorise it. Because I believe that has to go to full council under the Finland.
But should we not, sorry to prolong this, but I think it's important that we try and understand what we mean by discuss and agree. Because yes, we're agreeing, I think, to ask Lisa to go back to food bank, but should we not also be agreeing some principles that she should discuss with them in terms of, do we feel it should be 12 months, 18 months, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years? Do we feel it should be £1 raising to, do you see what I mean? It's,
yeah, no,
because otherwise we're not.
But we're then back to Mike's statement of we need policy, and I am not going to hold up the food bank question whilst we resolve our lack of policy. So I agree that we should have a parallel process that sorts out our policy of letting in terms of periods and pricing and grants and whatever else. But
Can I make a comment? I'm not going to comment on that.
John's going to go first before he explains.
I'm not going to explode. Just make the observation, we talked about another tenant of ours that we've been deeply involved with down at the on Occupation Road, where the principle of the landlord sets the lease and the terms, and then the tenant negotiates them. And you need to agree the heads of terms first. So there's still a discussion that needs to be had around what the heads of terms are before you actually agree a lease. We can't agree a lease until we've agreed heads of terms. So if Lisa goes back to the food bank and says, what do they want? That's fine, but then we're asking her to operate a little bit in the dark still, because she can't really negotiate unless she has got some guidance from us as a committee as to what her parameters are.
That's kind of what I was trying to say, but it's a bit much more eloquent.
What I like is that what Max, I think, is saying isn't to discuss a policy for everybody, although he sounds like he would like that, but particularly with this, Lisa asked, what do you want me to tell the food bank? Do you want me to tell you, the first year's free, £1, the second year's whatever, third year's whatever. And you want to stay here for 3 years. That's sort of what I'm saying. However, I would just remind people that I thought a decision was made by the state, so I wasn't part of that decision because I abstained, but I think you might need to look at it to see, it seemed to me like a decision had been made, a bit like with the Scouts, when Max and I got involved belatedly, a decision had been made years ago, and so we didn't really have a negotiation position. All we were saying to them was, we want to try to make things fair for the council as well, and there are some other options. So that was a sort of another one where we were, having had made the decision, people had made the decision, we sort of had to tidy up a little bit, and I think this is similar. So I think the decision was made last one, whether it should or shouldn't be, I don't know, we have to have a look at the side. But I think what you're asking for is just a clear direction, what to say to the food bank tomorrow with regard to taking that route downstairs. Is that what you're?
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you think the decision that was made was, and what do you think the answer to Lisa's question should be?
Well, I think the only decision made was to let the food bank use that room for £1. There was no talk about term or anything else. So that's what I recall happening.
Yeah.
You have to look at it.
I'm clear that that's.
And I think if it's allowed on this thing here, then Max's point should be just to give Lisa a little bit of guidance in terms of the amount, the term, and what would happen after, say, the first year.
So we decided the amount. So the question is term. Does anybody have a view?
I'd give it to them for 12 months and see how it goes. But I'd be happy also with 6 months and a review. But my immediate reaction is it'll take a while for people to understand where it is. It'll take a while to get the processes right while they're here, and to expect them to do that and understand what their ongoing needs might be within 6 months, I think is tight. So I'd be proposing a year with a review after 9 months as to whether they want to extend it. So we've got 3 months to have a discussion about what comes next.
I would agree with that. I think it's kind of reasonable.
So personally, I wouldn't bother moving my business if all I had was 9 months.
They've got 12 months,
Yes.
but we're saying review in 9 months to see whether they want to renew after 12 months.
To what terms?
Don't know, because I don't know how much they're going to make. I don't know how much money they need. I don't know how.
Yeah, but they're not going to make any money. They're a food bank.
Just give them half.
Sorry?
Just give them
Well,
it away, aren't they?
but they're-
Giving money away.
But they're reducing their costs.
They're reducing their costs. They've also got to work out logistics and operational stuff. I don't know if they have the same space that they had before, whether they have less space than they had before, what the logistics were for delivering, what the logistics were for collecting. It's a whole bunch of things that they need to work out when they get here.
Mm-hmm. But so I think we get too hung up on the need for for why one sets the term of a lease, because all of our leases contain break clauses on both sides. So the key question as a tenant is, would I commit to messing all my volunteers around, disassembling all of my storage stuff, bringing it over here for a set of terms that I knew were only going to last for 12 months, and then after 9, I'm potentially going to get told, oh, we're going to put your rent up to X or whatever. Where you might then go, oh, actually, that doesn't work for me at all. I'm going to go back to where I was.
That's their decision, not yours.
So two things. One, that is their decision. 2, if you don't like the proposal I've made, as chair, you're perfectly entitled to make a counter proposal. We haven't actually agreed anything at this moment. It's
Oh,
just
absolutely. I'm
put a fish in the water, and I'm saying that's what I would do. If you don't like it, offer something else.
I would offer them a lease for the remainder of this council term. So, till at least 2.5 years if they sign it now.
What, at £1 a year?
We're arguing the difference. So they're not going to come here if we charge them more than they're currently paying.
So are they only paying that much?
So they're paying £1,500.
Right.
So we're arguing the what's it for 1,500 quid.
So are
Really,
we
is
saying
this-
we
is this
desperately
the-
want it then? We
I-
haven't quite worked out what we think it's doing for us.
Well,
It's not bringing any money in, is it?
no, I think we're offering a social good.
Because I'm thinking about volunteer action.
Mhm.
That would also have a very good case for
Well,
saying,
James,
well,
so-
we only want to pay £1 a
You know,
year.
yes, no,
It's a good
but
deal you get
how
here
much,
at
how
Arundel.
much do we give volunteer action a year as a council?
Well, peanuts, really.
No,
No,
5,000.
So,
But we don't do that, it's not a yearly thing, that, you
It is.
see. That's not how that fund works. Sorry, but
in the
it's
same
not.
thread.
Unless you're changing the rules.
it's not guaranteed.
James, can I just point forward? We've had this discussion last month, okay? We've had this discussion. What we're talking about now,
It's tough.
the only thing that is on this list, which I'm not sure anybody wants to talk about, is to discuss and agree the terms of the lease. Now, that's what's on the agenda.
Yeah.
So if you, I won't talk because I'm not party, I've said that, but if you want to talk about that, feel free, not other things, because it's
Well, you don't have
been
a,
discussed.
prejudicial interest, so you can contribute as much as you like.
Well, my contribution is quite simple. There was an agreement made last month, you'll have to look up the video to see exactly how it went,
So,
if you weren't here especially. That's one thing. The second thing is Lisa's asked for guidance on the amount and the term. The current amount is £1, that would agree, unless you want to change that. Maybe it can be changed or not, I don't know. And the thing about the term is clearly Food Bank has been at that place for many years. I don't know how many years, but a long time. So I don't think they could have come there for 10 minutes.
How about it?
And I doubt there'll be a lack of food bank requirement in the next 5 years at Albion. I think you'll find there'll be a bigger demand than there's ever been before in Albion.
Do you realise that a lot of it goes to Corby? They have an arrangement.
Val, that is
to
not
go to
true.
Corby.
That is not true, Val. I know intimately how it works. I'm happy to talk to you about it
Okay.
afterwards. But nothing goes to Corby.
Can I just try and get back us on track on relation to that? So we're still on agenda item 2632, 2, 7:15,
yeah,
where we're to discuss and agree terms of the lease. The deputy chair of this meeting has suggested a 12-month lease in terms of time, presumably at the peppercorn rent again, which we have previously agreed. I have suggested my support for that. Essentially, James, the chair, is very much against it. So it's up to you, Val, basically.
it is for somebody to make a proposal, which has not yet happened.
Well, no, but if 3 of us agree out of 4, then that's agreement, surely.
Make a proposal then, James, and then we can move on.
So I propose that we, it's not a proposal because it's blah, 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 but I think we should offer them a lease of at least 2.5 years. At £1.
Fine.
Does anybody else agree with that?
For the sake of moving on and giving Lisa guidance, I would be content with that and see what they say, Lisa. Because they might come back and say, let's have it for 7.5 years, and then we've got a different, then we've got a proposal to discuss.
So I'll take you as a second then, John?
Yeah.
That proposal.
Well, it's not.
It can't be a proposal because it's not on there.
But I've supported James's guidance to you. to go back and say, we think it's 30 months, how does that work for you?
Okay.
So, 2603, to receive an update report of the 2026 Properties and Open Spaces Tour. Is there anything you want to raise to bring to our attention, Lisa?
Nope.
Is there any questions that anybody that wasn't able to attend has? No?
That's a good report, I think.
Hello?
I think it's a good report, it's comprehensive.
Yeah.
So, yeah, very clear.
I particularly like the goalpost diagram.
Are you claiming copyright?
No, I didn't do it, Lisa did it.
He's
So I
trying to
don't mean
move,
copyright, I mean design, well, so.
he's trying to move the goalpost.
Oh. Well, swivel them, actually, I can't quite move.
3204, to receive the condition report upon the Fullerton House lift. Anything you want to draw our attention to there, Lisa?
No, but I did find out, which I found a little bit worrying, that because funny enough, he came and did the report the day after the chap who comes and services it came. So I said, I don't need to email it to you, here it is. And he said those points there have been done, they're not. And when I spoke to the engineer, he said, oh, because I've not visited this list before, I saw that they were on the last report. So I made sure they were on there so it didn't get missed. So that, to me, didn't give me that much confidence. So he said, I'll redo the report then, because I showed a video that proved something about the space. And so then that's why it came back with less points on than when it originally came through.
Wow. But that might be a consideration about our supplier for next year,
Yeah.
etc.
Last wanting.
Ooh, well done, Lisa.
And down to 3302, vehicles, an update, receive an update report on the new OTC electric vans. Anybody got any comment that they want to make on
No,
that?
I'm glad you've sold them, I'm glad we've moved on, and I like the piece in the advertising.
I've not read that yet.
No.
Not in there.
So 2635, courthouse. Approved costs for contractor to finish the courthouse painting. John.
So this is something that I've had in my bonnet for a long while, as Lisa knows. I think we should take the refund, never use this chap again. The problem I've got with this is that the original budget for 1,600 quid, we get that money back. The new quote is for a lot more. And the new quote actually is for two separate pieces. One was for the courthouse, which is £3 grand, £1,500 more than the budget. So we need to think about how we deal with that. And the QVH quote is not for this committee, it's for the trust to agree. But you may remember, Lisa, we had a lot of discussion at the QVH thing about including the notice boards within that quote. The notice boards are not QVH property, they are town council property. And so there are two things I would draw attention to. One is, this is already over the budget that's been agreed and is available. Two, it doesn't include the notice boards. So I think we should have a separate, a renewed quote to include the notice boards, because they are frankly a disgrace for our town, and they should be improved. But we also have to make a decision as to whether we go to full council and say, can we have this money out of reserves, or include it in the April 27 budget.
Based on feedback I understand we've had from tenants, I don't think we can afford to leave the exterior unpainted for another winter.
I hope so,
So-
agree, because it will cost us even more. So I'll get that done, but it's a council approval thing, not
Yes.
a this committee approval.
Yeah, so that's got to go to full council in 2 weeks' time for a release of reserves, unless you've got money somewhere else in your budget that you can move around.
So this, you're talking for the courthouse?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when I was talking to Emma, because things have now changed quite dramatically, she was saying, because we put this 25,000 for the roof repairs, even though the R&M is only 1,000, she said, can we not use some of that, because that's going to change, that whole plan has changed now, hasn't it? So that was her thinking on that, or our thinking on that, I should say.
kind of reluctant in principle to saying, we've got this budget here which is allocated for that, and because we're going to be spending a lot more on that, we'll take some of this away so we can spend even more. If that doesn't seem the right accounting process, so I think it's a full council decision to agree it, but I think it needs to go to council in July because it's got to be done. I mean, for two reasons. One, the tenants are rightly complaining about the shoddy state of affairs. Two, it just does not reflect well on us as a council. So we need to get it done. But I would also ask them, and if we can get it in the next 2 weeks and include it in the paper for council, to repaint the notice boards because they are.
Yeah, is that a separate thing? It's not, they're not outside courthouse, are they? Or,
Yeah.
Oh, they are, okay, I'll get back here. I'd add a third point to that, is that if we don't do it now, it's going to be a lot more money next year, because you're probably talking about replacement of those gates. And those gates are 5, 10 grand, you know, they're not devastating. So yes, it's a lot of money, but we have to do stuff. And everybody suffers because of what went on. Obviously, nobody in this room is responsible.
So, sorry, you were saying the notice board, you're talking about the QVH notice boards, not
The
the
notice boards
courthouse.
outside the QVH.
QVH, yeah, sorry, because I thought you might have said courthouse.
Yeah, I was confused about that too.
So the courthouse gates need to be done.
Yeah.
And we need to get council to approve a transfer from reserves for that, so that's a 2-week thing, in my view. But we also ought to ask the contractor to give a quote to repaint the notice boards and include that within the same request to council to release funds, because it should be within the 1,600 quid. Or it's quoted within the 1,600 quid, but not done. And the proposal ought to be able to say is 3.1 plus whatever the notice boards take, less 1,600 quid, which we're getting back, if we get it back.
Yeah. So the only problem is the next QVH trust meeting isn't until September, is it?
We're not talking about the QVH, we're just talking about the notice boards outside the QVH, which are owned by OTC.
Oh, right, of course, yes, they are, right.
QVH thing can wait.
John, just a question. I've never looked at those notice boards that closely. Are they paintable or is it a replacement?
It's not a replacement. I think they can be stripped and repainted.
Okay. Is that going to be achievable, Lisa, that you can get a re-quote in?
Yeah.
And get it up. So next item should be even easier than that, other than it's a bit of a shocker. So we had the interim report from the survey of the courthouse, which has identified that one face of the roof has got tiles that have slipped and may fall onto the road. The recommendation was to get it done within a year. If we wait and put it into the budget for next year, we go through another winter and potentially you don't know what the winter is going to do to that roof. So to get ahead of that, the recommendation is to go to full council in 2 weeks' time, asking for a release from reserves of up to £100,000 for the immediate repair, if it can be arranged, of the courthouse roof as identified by the survey report. Does anybody have anything they want to add to that? John?
I do, so it would be interesting to get Emma's view on this, but in previous council meetings I've suggested a budget be put aside, or a transfer be put aside for an unknown expenditure, and being told that you have to have a known expenditure if you're going to put it to council. That's point one. Point two, we might ask for £100,000, but I haven't seen any quotes to get it repaired. I've seen a figure in a survey. I haven't seen any quotes to get it repaired. So if we've got time to get a proper quote, and for £100,000 we only need 3, to get this repaired in the next 10 days, fantastic. I don't think we will. So I think any proposal ought to be to agree in principle the use of or the transfer of £100,000 or thereabouts, because we don't know how much it will actually cost.
No, that's why I said up to.
But it might be more. And if you say £100,000, then in September we have to go back for 120. Well, I suppose you've established the bridgehead, haven't you?
Yeah. So, but the key elements, as I see it, is we tie ourselves in knots about at what point does a council or any organisation enter into an obligation to pay. So if we go out and get a load of quotations and, you know, in 3 weeks' time, somebody comes along and says, I can do that for you in September. And we go, yes, we want you to do that at this price based on your quotation. As far as I'm concerned, we have entered into a contract at that point. Now, if we're saying we can only enter into contracts with the approval of council, then at the point where we have those quotations, we need to meet to accept whichever one we're accepting.
I think we're confusing the issue. I think John is entirely right. If this goes to full council without quotations in 2 weeks' time,
Yeah.
full council simply won't agree.
Absolutely.
So realistically, I think all we can actually ask Lisa to do is to try and get quotations ASAP, so that then a proposal, as and when we've got those quotations, goes to full council with a clear budget sum.
Okay, so the next full council will be the 3rd week in September.
Yeah.
So we will not be able to say to anybody, yes, we want you to do the roof in the 1st week of September until the 3rd week of September.
Absolutely. That's the reality.
Yeah, but in fact, it won't get done for a long, long time because, this is probably less than roof. So, so the quickest you're probably going to get someone from a yes to doing it is 3 months.
Yeah.
So they'll be up there in December, January.
You can't sign a contract without having had a proper proposal. You can't have a proper proposal without a quote, I'm afraid.
Well, you can do a lot of things, but we don't wish to operate like that.
No. Well, I'll have to look at the standing orders first. But I think, FinRegs certainly says for an amount of this, for a spend of this sum, you need 3 quotes.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with that.
I think what would be helpful though, James, would be to say to council in July, we are going to have to spend this money. And prime councillors, and in fact ask councillors what questions they need to have answered. Because what I would hate to happen, or not hate, that's a bit strong, what I think we should avoid, absolutely avoid, is getting to September, putting a proposal forward and somebody going, I have a question for you. So I think it's entirely right that in July we say, here's the report, the indicative figure is this £100,000. We will be coming back in September to ask for about this sum of money, having had 3 quotes, and we need a decision in September, rather than surprise everybody in September.
I will be disappointed if the day after the officers have satisfied the financial regulations, that if they do not immediately call an extraordinary meeting of the full council. Because if because it comes back to, we got terribly anxious about how necessary it was to replace the gate closing mechanism because a child might run through them and be lost. We're talking about a roof that might fall into the road. And if we sit there going, oh, well, we got 3 quotes in July, but we thought we'd wait until the 3rd week of September to actually agree to do it.
No, we're not saying that, James. We're saying, well, I'm advising you that I think if you put a proposal as chair of this committee to council in 10 days' time, whatever, 14 days' time,
fully here
to ask for them to spend up to 100,000, it won't go through.
Yeah, no, I've heard that. But what I then heard was it needs to go to September. And I'm saying, no, if it doesn't go through in July, it needs to get approved at the first possible date after that. And if that's an extraordinary one, then that's.
In that case, we will, because the next official. And
Yeah.
The reason I mentioned September,
Next scheduled.
that's a scheduled.
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
But you're perfectly at liberty to call an extraordinary meeting if you feel appropriate. And it sounds like you do.
And just one observation is that it's not for us to say what we will go through a full council meeting. It's up to the full council.
Yes.
If full council say no, they say no, they say yes consent to anything.
Yeah.
So maybe every now and then we need to try something.
So I remain that I am proposing that we pass this resolution as it is specified. Do I have a seconder? Michael will second it. Can I have all of those in favour of going to full council and pointing out to them that the roof needs doing now and that £100,000 should be released for that purpose? All those in favour? All those against? Fails 2 to 3.
But I would go to council and give them indicative that this money needs to be.
The only thing we need to discuss is the resolution. We've discussed it, we move on. To receive the condition report as amended. So that was the thing that we've already discussed. So, safety gates and green next steps. So my understanding is we have asked RPM to come and change the mechanisms. They have done so, they still do not close properly.
Yeah, and I don't know, I've emailed her and she said she was coming out, when did she email me? I can't remember. They'd come out, when did you report it, Mike? They'd come out the Monday before you reported it, so that was last week, wasn't it? So when you told me again, I said, no, they're still not closing, so she said she'd get something out. She's not confirmed they've been out yet, so I'll chase it tomorrow.
Nothing for us to discuss there.
No.
So the RPM quote for identified play equipment replacement parts. Have we got budget for that? My assumption is no, because we were just talking about the things that's got to go to full council.
Yeah, I think after we had our conversation before, we were saying, when we had a meeting, when we were talking about the 5-year plan, about doing those bits over a 5-year period. None of these things are urgent. They don't make it not function, they don't make it dangerous, but they're still, yeah.
So I would like a change of approach to the RPM or to the British Engineering report.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that they don't condemn anything is not the same as it's not urgent.
Mm.
I think that as a council, we expect all of our equipment to be in its best condition at all times. Now, so if we've got a fraying net and some bolts that have got their caps missing and whatever, I would expect to do that as fast as possible. The choice you have as an officer is to either come to us saying, we want to do that right now, but recognising that there is no budget left, it needs to go to full council for a release. Or, given that the approach taken previously has been to action the British Engineering report within 12 months, you actually have time to take that RPM quote, put it through the budget process and get it in for next year's budget and deliver that in April. Over to you, which way would you like to go? Personally, I would support you in getting it done this year, but we've got no budget, it's got to go to full council. Unless we do a veerment. We haven't got anything anywhere else.
No, we used to have a pot of youth activities, didn't we, that we used to use if we needed to, but that's gone, so. Well, yeah, I mean, the sooner we get them done, the less there's something knocked off the list,
Yeah. So 2 weeks' time,
yeah.
Full council. Discuss the phased refurbishment of the individual play items as discussed in the 5-year, as detailed in the 5-year plan. So I think we've already agreed that approach and support it wholeheartedly. Discuss quote for the full refurbishment of skate park 3803. full refurbishment of one ramp in the skate park. Next steps in line with a planned refurbishment as detailed in the 5-year plan. So I don't think there's anything to discuss there particularly because it's your
I just
proposal.
asked her to give me an illustration of what totally refurbing one item would mean. And she said structurally they look quite good. So she said, I don't see the point in ripping those out entirely. They can be refurbished to a really good standard. So yeah. But
Well,
this is
stand
the one
corrected,
more.
we're saying that's part of the 5-year plan, so it's going to go in the 27-28 year.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're not doing it this year.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Quote for the half pipe structural and surface repairs. Decide next steps. So that is one that you're saying this year potentially.
Yeah, because I think some of the damage was done after the BES report, because he didn't mention it at all. But although the chap who's given the quote, I asked him specifically, do we need to close it down? Because obviously it's going to get a lot of use over the summer. He said no, as long as the repairs are done fairly quickly. So this is the one that I wouldn't feel happy with leaving this. I would, if we're not going to approve that, I'd rather close it down, which isn't great, because it's considering putting up to the school holidays. So, yeah.
So that's another 2 councils.
So, again, I think that we've got no budget, blah, 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 full council, but emergency. I think Emma can authorise it with Max's support, get it done rather than waiting another 2 weeks and then starting it late July. And then it's just reported to full council that this action has been taken.
Yeah.
If that's within fin regs, I 100% agree.
Where are we getting? 3804. The metal detecting policy. Right. So we've received advice from our officers that the majority of local authorities actually take a different view to what the approach that we took in full council, where we were generous and approved people to come and do metal detecting, and they have discovered that most authorities do not do that. So on the basis of that, and supported by Danny at NCalc, the proposal is now metal detecting is not permitted by Angle Town Council on Angle Town Council land, except as may be necessary to deliver services commissioned by the council or in cases of significant public interest. Applicants for exceptions will be liable for all costs incurred during the consideration of their application, and to take away anybody who might want to do it to see if they can find some treasure, subject to statutory obligation, Angle Town Council will retain 100% ownership of all items found.
So basically telling them to go away.
Yeah.
But given that we have agreed 2 requests in very quick succession,
Yep.
whilst I support this, I think we should publish it widely because people might presume the opposite, that we are minded to agree unless. So we need to get that out pretty quickly.
Well, if we pass it, it's a complete about facing our policy, but it is based on advice that we have now received. Again, had we had more advice when we received the original requests, we may have made different decisions. But so I'm proposing that we adopt the revised version. I have a seconder for that, and anyone in favour? Unanimous.
So I think as well, if I get Rebecca to put something out, maybe put a statement out saying, although we have allowed previously, in light of new information and advice, the council taking a decision not to.
I mean, it's up to the communications committee. I'll do it slightly differently. I'd be very much more bullish and just say, council made this decision. I wouldn't go into the excuses if we don't agree, because that opens debate. I'll just tell them what's the story after the 21st of July.
3805, receive the minutes from the last OTC FFA. Anybody have any questions on that? John?
Not about Pletton Field, but I know your comment about red kites and people feeding them. I don't know if it's the same person, but it looks like the same person does it in South Field as well.
Okay.
So I think, whatever we're doing in Pletton Field, we should also do in South Road.
Yeah, the poster that Rebecca has done specifically mentioned, because it's obviously our property, it's the other one that we're potentially going to print out and put around Pletton Field, because that is also the advice from the RSPB. I looked it up years ago and they said, no, you should not be feeding them.
We had, just as a quick one, we had lunch outside our house on Friday. Red kite came down and pinched food off the table because it's been, I think.
Got that used to be, yeah, absolutely.
So it's dangerous. We don't want seagulls.
No.
So that's, by the by, can we do the same in South Road Field, please?
So 2643 marketplace signage update, no update, I'm assuming in the absence of Councillor Clark being an update, in which case 2649 bins. Mike, would you like to talk to us about bins?
Yeah,
Is the item to discuss and decide next steps as it was requested? Is that what your intention was for this item?
Yeah.
Okay.
As you've heard from Helen, which is something that more alarmingly than I've noticed, but personally I'm a dog, and I particularly noticed things around the wreck, and they're definitely getting a lot worse. And as said, we have a lot more complaints, and we're only going to get a lot more complaints because things are not changing. I did have a call with the larger partnership thing the other night, and Max was not available, where we are one of 30 larger councils in Northamptonshire. Have you gone one of those calls, John? They have about 3 meetings a year. I didn't know we were one of the 30 largest councils in Northamptonshire, complete with West End and North together. And along the other 29, 80% of the residents live in that area. The other 240 councils have 20% of residents. I'm only mentioning that because it's a big number. Adele Watkins, who is the CEO of Northants, talked a lot, and you'll get that coming around from Emma, the exact detail of it was recorded or whatever. But she said they want to, a part of their devolution plan, bins is one of their things. So just as a general thing, because it seems to have become a bit worse than it used to be, it could be that some people in Northants have viewed that bins are going, so, it's not going to be a top priority for them. I don't know. But that's one of the things. So it could be an opportunity for us to have devolution of the bins. What that means exactly, I don't know, and make our own arrangements happen in the future. But just for a minute, I'm a bit clearer on some of this now because Lisa's provided some information. But we do have around about somewhere between about 10 and 25 bins, depends on what the asset register means. For example, it says 3 in the wreck and then 5 plus a bit further along. So I'm not sure if it's 3 or 5 plus. But anyway, if you add up the left-hand column and right-hand column between about 10 and 25 bins that are on our land. And those ones are definitely not being collected very, very regularly, as you've heard. Churchyard ones, for example. So my view was, well, did we have a written agreement with NNC regarding emptying our bins, let alone their own ones? I don't know if we've ever had them properly.
I don't know. I spoke to Emma about it, but she doesn't recall one either. So whether it was pre our time, I don't know. I certainly haven't seen anything.
Okay, so for whatever's happened, for some reason, NNC have decided they will empty our bins. I'm talking specifically the ones on our land at the moment, so let's call it 20 bins, roughly. But for some reason, that sort of stopped being done as regularly as it used to be done. It might be part of that reason I gave, or it might be just whatever. But I think if there's no written agreement, what there was they billed us up until a point fairly recently, and we used to pay and used to take them. So the next question was, when did we stop getting billed, or when did we stop paying invoices, or whichever way around you want to put it? Because that also, it may be that they think we don't want service anymore. Possibly a communication thing, I don't know. So I'm not sure when the last time we were invoiced by NNC. It may have been a long time ago.
For what?
Emptying our bins.
But we're not invoiced.
We're not invoiced.
Well, what I've been told is that we were invoiced by NNC to empty our bins.
Yeah, that's what I'm told me. But what I got the impression from the maintenance staff, certainly with the recreation ground things, is because a relationship was developed between maintenance staff and the lads that became the regular emptiers of bins. They would quite often go over and above what they were supposed to do. But then when it was reported that the ones in the rec weren't being emptied very often, I think Martin said to them, you know, what's happening? They said, oh, we've been told not to empty them anymore. So I don't know. We don't know where these instructions are coming from. We don't know the differential between are they being paid for doing these bits, or was it just kindness?
And how long ago did they have that discussion then?
Probably within a year, but it was before we started getting the major complaints.
So now that we've got to this stage, we can try to find out as much as what it sounds like. We don't know very much officially, but we would have had a budget of some kind for emptying these bins. And I don't know if that budget's still floating around in there, many lines of budgeting. You don't think so, but there's a lot of lines there, a lot of things on it. Could be.
None of them say paid.
And whatever amount of money that was, then I will be proposing it at the next time we do the budgeting, to put that in and to let the contractor, someone who does want to do it, because we can't just leave them full up and overflowing all the time.
The other thing that was interesting that Helen said as well, that they weren't emptied before an event. Now that used to be standard, that they were always emptied before an event, because they were obviously notified of the event, and they were always emptied on the Monday after the event. But the other thing that we need to consider as well is when we do our food festival and Christmas market, we get in a contractor that brings us 5 of the 1,100 big bins. And I think that's one thing that if other people are running events, we should stipulate that they need to do, that they need to bring in and pay a contractor to do extra to stop this kind of thing happening.
Thank you. John? So the residents raised this with our county councillors on the 15th of June, and was told, and then saw Marcus from NNC Refuse Services the following morning, who confirmed he empties out the bins in the main areas daily and the less used bins as required, and apologised they hadn't been emptied recently. He'd been off work and was noted to do the job while he's there. To which my response was, why not? And John Humberston has a quote from the waste team. Apologies in the first instance for having to report bins in question not being emptied. I understand at the back end of last week we had some operational issues, which led to some of the bins not being emptied in line with our schedule. Since then, I've requested the urgent emptying of any bins that were not completed. I can reassure you that is now taking place. You're saying it hasn't?
Absolutely not.
In which case, we need to go back to, I suggest, John Humberston, who is a county councillor and has been told a mistruth.
John, I'm just going to ask who is going between this.
So this is a conversation which started off with a local resident who sent it to the councillors, the county councillors, copied in Max and me and Handel admin. So the council was aware that those individuals continued throughout this chain. So Handel admin knew, Max's mayor knew, and me as past it knew. But it wasn't put on the agenda because this is the first agenda since that moment. So, thank you.
No,
Okay, Matt?
They did do exactly what they said they did. I think the confusion is when we use the word our bins,
Yes,
because we, OTC, have bins and NNC have bins. What they did was to empty the NNC bins. I don't happen to know, and I know that they did because I actually saw them.
Yeah, I've seen the one that I complained.
What I don't know is whether they emptied bins that would be in St. Peter's Cemetery and Glen Field, which are our bins and our responsibility. If those bins aren't emptied when we want, we only have ourselves to blame.
Well,
But given that we have not been emptying them all, then,
historically ever.
yeah, so it's all very well for NNC to empty bins that, well, so it comes back to Mike's point. So what are we trying to get out of this in the next 8 minutes? It's, we need to clarify for every bin in the town, whose is it and who is taking responsibility for it, and what is the service level that they are expecting to work to. Once we establish that, we can start monitoring them to see whether those service levels are being met, and if they're not, complain.
Yeah.
And if there is a two-tier service level where NNC look after their bins better than the ones that they look after for us or ours, then we can explore how do we get those upgraded, or do we change our service provider?
Completely agree.
Yeah.
But the first step, which I believe Mike essentially wants approval for, is to engage with the officers to work with NNC through official channels, as well as going through open channels to find all of that information.
Agreed. And what I would just add to that is that given the email exchange between two of the NNC councillors and the town clerk, to which I was copied in, I would argue that the town clerk can do that by following up those emails to get clarification around those points.
Rather than reinventing the wheel.
Is that everything you would want from that conversation?
Yeah, and I would happily volunteer to go around the town, identifying what bins exist, because I don't think we're 100% clear what bins are out. And I can also add into that, if you want to help you, because I know Emma hasn't got time to do that, and I wasn't expecting that she would. I'd happily volunteer to help you doing that. There was one taken away outside the school with the new building going on. So, some have taken it away. I think it's all in a good place.
Cool. I don't think that's a need for a vote, is it? That's just a general agreement.
Yep.
Yeah, there's an agreement.
So I'd like to see that concludes the items on the agenda, other than to whisk round the room and ask for items on the business. Dan?
no, I don't think so.
John? No? Matt?
I do, hopefully it's very short. In relation to the Fletton Field Association, it wasn't on the agenda, but I think they are still waiting for the group is waiting for clarity as to who represents the council on that working party.
So there's the Fletton Fields Association, and then there's a working party between the
It's
two.
a working party that I'm talking about, where we have 3 members.
Yeah.
But were they not assigned at the annual
No, that's the
meeting?
whole point. No, it's this group that assigns them. At least that's what was done previously.
Okay.
What I'm suggesting is that at a future meeting, which clearly will not be until September now, that there is an agenda item that elects members to that committee
From the estates.
from the
So
estates.
the 3 of us on the working party
So
framework.
currently it was Matt, Rob and Val. Val and Rob have said they're quite happy to carry on. I know Rob isn't part of this.
And
Matt's
that's
role
the
was
other point, is
Spencer.
Rob is a legacy member. But technically, well, when it was kicked off, it came out of this group. And
So
so I think that
sensible.
we've just got mixed up now, and we need to straighten it out.
Oh, there's no reason Rob can't continue if he wants to.
Well, in which case, it's not a subcommittee of this committee, it ought to be discussed at full council so that any councillor can put themselves forward.
I'm happy to do it that way round.
You can do that 2 weeks time.
So can we ask that an agenda item goes on? And I know we're not meant to be making decisions, but I will secondly request outside of this meeting.
Max, I think that's a great idea. Probably quite a change, David.
Mike.
When we did the walkabout, we learned a lot about next accounts and many other things, and a fence that's broken, and we told the deputy council not to come this year, so we talked about the reliability of deputy council coming. And then we said, well, what is reliable is the flow machine. And we've had that before for 500 quid-ish, is that right?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And everywhere else has been flamed recently. So do we have 500 pounds for flame?
I'll have a look.
If we do, then that's what needs to happen, and it needs to happen, fairly soon, which can't be reached in September.
Yeah.
So what I think for next time, or whatever you want to do it, if the money's there, I think they can go ahead and do that, can't they?
So if I summarise this rather than turning into a discussion, your question to the officer is when will Stipe Meadow maintenance be undertaken? And we will get a
You can't make
response.
decisions.
Exactly.
If the budget's there, it's an action.
The council, the council £800, which is what we're expecting.
And so with that, we are closed. Thank you very much.
Use this if you want.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm looking at it. I got told off for using it, Max said, I don't use that.
What Max is trying to do is reserve it for the mayor.
Yeah, and I'm happy to work with Max on that regard. I value his
I would use
his
it.
contribution to the town and defer to his authority.
I would use it just to piss him off.